Friday, everybody. Happy Friday. Everybody. I hope today is the day that you are going to get fried because you probably earned it. It's been a long week. It's been a hectic, crazy week for us all. And yet I am elated and ecstatic to see you all here with me. Welcome to the Friday edition of Burn It Down with Kim Brown. This is the safe space where we set oppression ablaze because we know and we understand that not only is a better tomorrow possible, but it is absolutely outright necessary. And we are here. We are the masons. We are the builders. We are the people ready to lay that foundation down because we're tired. I am tired. You are tired. We are all tired. So anywho, welcome everybody. I see all of our people coming up in the spot. Flame emojis on fire. What's going on? And a heart. Hey Leah. Hey Afra. Hey Afra. My niece Alicia is in here. My bruv Chuck Diesel with perfect attendance is in here. Schultze 100 been rocking with us long time. Franny Francais does not miss a day. Thank you all so much. Kevzy 24/7. What's going on, bro? Quick Socialist. Thank you so much. Listen, we got all of our all-stars rocking in here with us today. And of course, hi Shades. Hi Elena. Hi, baby girl. Guys, we have got a fantastic show for you. Real quick, I want to acknowledge the people who are watching us on Twitch at BIDWKB. Thank you, Northern Witch, for holding us down, moderating over there on Twitch. And you could follow us different places around the internet at BIDWKB, Facebook, Instagram, the Twitchers, and of course, here we are on the U of the Tubes. Now, gang, really quick, I want us to first say a special thank you to everybody that has rocked with us. And of course, our patrons, of which we have a couple of new ones. Thank you so much to Amonte for signing up as a new patron. And if you want to do that, you can support us very easily on the low for $2 a month at patreon.com/BIDWKB. But we're so appreciative that our patrons come through and engage and support. I also got to thank the good sis Sky Soul Power. Thank you so much for becoming a new patron. We really appreciate that. And we've already got our patrons commenting on the post of today's show already. What's up, Lewis Kang? Lewis Kang said, I'm showing up early to come talk about this one. And guys, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks. I've been letting you know that it's Black History Month. And I acknowledge I have not done the best job here of acknowledging and talking about Black History Month. There's been a lot of present day Black history that has been going on, but it is always important to look back at the past, to look at the lessons that our ancestors and our elders and our foremothers and forefathers have left for us to learn from the struggles and the suffering and the challenges and the victories of past achievements of Black folks, not only here in America, but Black folks across the world. So on today, y'all, I wanted us to talk about the issue of, do we stay and fight or do we flee? We see fascism fast encroaching in this country, regardless of who's in the White House, apparently. that makes little difference as to whether or not fascism has already not only taken a hold, but is beginning to grow. And we know who is going to be the first one's called when the fascists decide to call the herd, so to speak. When the fascists decide who gets to live and who gets to die, who gets to be housed, who gets to eat, even though we are dealing with a significant degree of that right now, I fully expect that to increasingly get worse. And it's going to be felt primarily by the most marginalized of us, disabled folks. It's going to be felt more by Black folks, indigenous folks, brown folks, non-white people, non-hetero people. Like, we are going to experience some shit that we did not think in the modern American time that we would be experiencing. And like I said, here we are in Black History Month, and I've been looking into our good brother, W.E.B. DuBois, one of the most noted and acclaimed intellectuals of, I suppose, the 19th and the 20th century. DuBois was bad, sir, bad bruv. And his organizing really with everybody that he could, right? He organized with Black folks here in America. He organized Pan-African conferences. He organized multiracial coalitions. And yet, I don't understand why he never just permanently left. I was always in confusion as to why W.E.B. Du Bois spent the majority of his life here, even though he was a global citizen. He had an obligation, or he felt a duty to Black America. And do you feel that same duty? Or do you feel the call, I imagine, as Jewish people in Eastern Europe felt right before the Third Reich took over? Or do you feel that sort of sense of panic? like, hey, something just ain't right. And I think if we have the means, maybe we should try to roll out to perhaps safer shores. So I am so excited to be joined today and have this conversation and really sit at the feet and learn more about their thoughts about this topic, and especially how this would have been viewed, or how this was viewed through the lens of W.E.B. Du Bois. So I'd like you guys to join me in welcoming someone that I know that you all know. We are joined today with Dr. Charisse Burden-Stelly. Charisse is a PhD. She teaches Africana Studies and Political Science at Carleton College, and I'm so excited for her to be joining us today. Also, Charisse is the co-author of the forthcoming book, Organize, Fight, and Win, 3 Decades of Black Communist Women's Political Writings, that is coming out this spring on Verso Books. Dr. CBS, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you on Burn It Down with Kim Brown.
Thank you for having me. This is wild. I can see myself on 2 screens. I'm not used to this. This is like the high-tech stuff. So I'm like, what's going on? But hi, I'm so glad to be here.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to have you. I'm so excited to have you because I need some lessons, Doc. I need some enlightenment here because sure, I am afraid. I am afraid for Black people living in the United States right now. I am afraid that regardless of whether or not Donald Trump is elected back to the White House, I feel that Black Americans' conditions will continue to deteriorate. And there is a big call for people to continue to organize, to join organizations, to engage in mutual aid to support the community. And I know this is not the first time that Black Americans have faced exceedingly dire political circumstances, in addition to material circumstances too. But I want us to, if you could, because Du Bois obviously faced all of these same issues in his time. And while he absolutely during his lifetime went all around the world and organized and build coalitions with all kinds of folks, how come he just didn't stay abroad? I was always confused. I'm like, why did he keep coming back? How come he just didn't stay gone? But there's a duty inside. Charisse, you just said something to me before we went on air that you are going to go down with the ship. Is that the position that Du Bois took as well?
Well, so I guess the first thing I'll say is sort of like, where are you going to go? Because if you understand imperialism, if you understand coloniality and capitalism and the way that domination works, it is beyond national borders. So there's something to be said about the level or magnitude of suffering in the belly of the beast versus if you go elsewhere, right? Because it's not, the US has the world in a chokehold when it comes to war, expropriation, domination. And so even if you leave the US proper, there's something to be said about still being, caught in the crosshairs of US violence. And so, there are perhaps places where, maybe Cuba, where the conditions will be better, but that also depends on class. It also depends on how you will be positioned vis-a-vis the state. It depends on many, many things. And so I think that, but to your question about Du Bois, I think that he, even to the very end, I think he believed in the capacity of the United States to change for some reason. And this is why people, question his Marxism, because they say that he was sort of always an idealist. He believed in the capacity of democracy. And I think that he believed there was something important and exceptional about US Blacks in particular and their role in the struggle. And so, but this is not necessarily unique to Du Bois. If you think about somebody like James Baldwin, right, who often left but always came back. If you think about Walter Rodney, who left Guyana and went to Jamaica and Tanzania and Cuba and Europe, but ended up coming back which ultimately led to his demise, right? His assassination in 1980. And side note, happy birthday, Patricia Rodney. Shout out to Dr. Patricia Rodney. It's her birthday today. Anyway, and so I think that there is something about struggling in one's homeland that feels like a responsibility, especially when you understand the sort of the ubiquity and the tentacles of imperialism.
I get that totally, because everywhere is pretty much a colony at some point, or a former colony, and anti-blackness is so pervasive around the globe. It I can understand that, but I feel as though, I mean, there's such a suffocation here in the U.S. I think of blackness, of black identity, and of course just black existence, just trying to survive here. Is a day to day, week to week, sort of month to month thing, and when we think about, I'm trying to figure out exactly how, I'm trying to frame this, because I get the idea of staying and fight, that this is something that we built. But my question is, I know there have been prior movements. Marcus Garvey wanted to reappropriate black folks back to Africa. And in some African nations, they are, I would imagine, opening their arms and welcoming us back. I think Ghana and I think Liberia have programs available for Black Americans to come on home. Should we try to go back and take our talents, whatever they are, and try to rebuild the African homeland, as opposed to trying to keep investing it here in the United States?
I think that that's an important question. What Marcus Garvey and the, people like Eli Garcia, or people in the UNIA, discovered very quickly in Liberia was the oppressive role of the comprador class, or the petty bourgeoisie, right? That they themselves, who were in bed with the United States and were allied with international corporations, were oppressing the Liberian people, to the point where there was still conditions of enslavement that were very prevalent in the 1930s, and that were in some ways exacerbated with the entrance of Firestone in the 1930s and 1940s. And so these processes, I know I already said this, but these processes are global. And so it's going to be a similar or linked type of struggle wherever it is that you go, so I think, part of Du Bois's argument, so people really flatten the debate between Garvey and Du Bois, and I think that Du Bois was integral to getting Garvey deported. He was not, right? And so I got receipts, and I posted them on Twitter too. But so I think that Du Bois says something along the lines of, like, shorn of its bombast, right? That Garvey's ideas were practical in terms of making a sort of economic linkage between the Black world, arguing for a decolonial and anti-colonial African continent. Like, those things were practical. But at the same time, there are a whole other set of issues that one has to face. So in Liberia was fighting off the French and the British in terms of colonization. And this is why they relied heavily on the Americans and ended up taking predatory loans from the Americans, for example. And so all of this to say, I think that wherever we go, there's going to be a particular set of struggles, because if we, neocolonialism is real. So the question is sort of, where might we go on the continent, or where might we go in the Caribbean? And then what are the types of battles we're willing to wage if we go elsewhere, right? There's no paradise. This thing is global. This thing is ubiquitous. And I think it's just a matter of where you wage struggle, which is why Pan-Africanism is so important. Like, where your base isn't necessarily the most important thing, but how you link up those struggles and how you commit yourself to that struggle, I think, is really important. And I think that's something that Du Bois probably understood as well.
Talk about it, the level of difficulty it is, or maybe it's not that difficult, and maybe Black Americans are not all that interested. Perhaps there's a disinterest there, but I don't think that's the case. I just think we just don't know. But being able to link the struggles of Black people dealing with colonialism still in Africa, Black British people from the Caribbean having their passports revoked, and being denied their citizenship, the Black people in Paris right now who are turning up, what is it? Noir v. Comte. All lives matter. Black lives matter. Not all lives, but Black lives matter. In France, in the way that they are fighting those colonial struggles there. How is it that we are still not building these coalitions necessarily en masse? Like, I feel as though politically, Black Americans spend a lot of time talking about Republicans and Democrats and who's going to be the first Black woman Supreme Court justice, and not necessarily making the links to how our struggles globally are united.
Mm-hmm. I think yes and no. Most Black people ain't talking about that shit. Most Black people are not like, so the petty bourgeoisie, sure, the what I call, the niggerati, yes, those are things that they are very much consumed with. But like day-to-day Black folks now, and it's not to say that day-to-day Black folks have a better international analysis than the petty bourgeoisie, but they're certainly not concerned with the goofy shit that electoralism. They understand. I feel like working class and poor Black people understand, it seems to me, far better than the petty bourgeoisie does, that politics is not reducible to electoralism. They're engaging in particular types of politics all the time, and struggle over resources all the time. But it's important to understand the way that internationalism was disciplined out. So, Gerald Horne talks about the Compromise of 1954, which is Brown versus Board of Education. And part of what that was there's particular types of nominal, quote unquote, integration or desegregation that happened. But part of that corrupt bargain was the disciplining of the left. And is primarily the left that engaged in these international forms of mobilizing and organizing. And it's waxed and waned. So we saw an uptick in the 1960s. In the 1970s, there was a sort of lull outside of sort of the anti-apartheid movement and some of the African Liberation Day stuff. In the 1990s, there was a sort of period of dormancy, and we see it rising up again around things like Palestine and mobilization against AFRICOM, for example. But I think the important thing to do is we have to concretize the importance of the international situation to what's happening here. And this is why people will say, oh, Pan-Africanism is an abstraction and all this other shit. But when we understand that warmongering abroad is intimately linked to state violence here, when we understand that warmongering, the reason why, for example, the Build Back Basic bill wasn't passed, but a $786 billion quote unquote defense budget was passed, is because these internationalists and these local conditions are very much bound up together because we are colonized. Like, Black people are colonized people. And so, all of that to say, I think we do have to get our internationalist analysis up. And I think that part of the way that we do that is satisfying the material needs of our people at the same time that we're engaging in political education. So more like grassroots organizing. The petty bourge not going to save us. The political class not going to save us because they're very much invested in this imperial project, period. Like, we cannot count on them or rely on them. And so I think the question is how everyday people can understand how the linked fate, right? Linked fate is part, some scholars call it that. Like, how do we understand that what happens to Black people here is not inseparable from what's happening throughout the African diaspora? And again, I think that this is something that DuBois really understood and worked throughout his whole life, through institution building, through organizing, through scholarship, through particular types of relations or conversations with governments that, as long as Africa is colonized, we're not going to be free, right? And that it's the duty of Black Americans to struggle not only on behalf of our own freedom, but the freedom of Black people, but also other oppressed people more broadly.
Well, there's a lot of people that, for one, Du Bois himself was a socialist, but there's a lot of people that believe that really, if we just had more Black millionaires, hell, even more Black billionaires, if we were able to amass enough Black capital to go over to Africa and buy up land from the colonists or from the Europeans, then that would set us on the path to Black liberation, because Black liberation can't come without economic. What are your thoughts about that, and how do you think Du Bois saw that as well? And actually, I have a clip for I was to play from Du Bois in a second, because anyway, I found a speech of his, and there was something that really jumped out at me. I want to hear from that in a second, but let me hear from you, CBS, on your thoughts about that.
Well, first of all, the land ain't the fucking Europeans to sell. So Black Americans are goofy if they think they're going to go buy some land from Europeans. That's furthering the dispossession. So it's like you're worried about the wrong shit if you think you're going to go and buy the lands from the white settlers. And newsflash, if they was going to give it up, they would have done it already. This is why, people can say whatever they want about Mugabe, but what Mugabe was doing is the basis of any type of Pan-African or diasporic project, because these white folks ain't going to lead. Who they're not giving up their shit,
land.
Period.
Take it back, land back. Yes.
Period. And so, I think that DuBois, so DuBois's project was not it wasn't an expatriation or a repatriation project. DuBois's was like, how do we wage struggle where we're at and link up those struggles and understand the correlation of forces whereby we have to have allies in China, in the USSR, in Cuba, and elsewhere. Like, we have to have allies and not be touting the State Department line like that goofy chick on TikTok. That's not for us, right? That's not what we need to be doing, right? And the US constructs all of these other peoples as enemies and as, threats to national security, precisely to pull the wool over the eyes of ordinary people, right? Like, so, when Muhammad Ali said, the Vietnamese never called me nigga, like, yeah, that's right, and that's a particular type of consciousness that I think comes from understanding the realities of imperialism and the realities of colonialism and the current realities of white supremacy that never went away. They wax and wane over time, but they never really went away. So we can't be fooled by the Obamas of the world or the multiculturalism or the post-racialism. Like, that's not right. And so anybody who's sort of shocked or like taken aback by Trump, or think that Trump is somehow aberrant, or think that Trump is somehow worse than Biden or any Reagan or Bush or Obama, that's a misunderstanding. Like, yeah, Trump is more rude, but if you look at the continuity between Trump's policies and Biden's policies, for example, you see exactly what their commitments are, and it ain't to Black folks. And also about this rising fascism or impending fascism, I do think Black people will suffer most, but Black people also have less to lose than everybody else. And precisely the reason why the liberals are going to side with the fascists is because they have the most to lose. They have the biggest fall, because they believe in U.S. mythology. But so I think that it's the liberals, in my perspective, as much as the fascists, that we have to be weary of.
I mean, they look a lot alike, right?
One of my friends used to say, I don't distinguish between my white folks. Like, they white. And there might be some more sort of whatever differentiation than that. But listen.
Listen, we have our John Brown Brigade, and then we got the rest of them. I mean, it's the radical whites and the rest of the whites. Is basically how I look at it. I want us to listen to a clip from DuBois from a speech that he gave in 1953, and this is something that was attributed on Matthew Siegfried's YouTube page as a speech given by DuBois in 53, where he was talking more broadly about anti-colonialism in Africa. But this point here that he makes about how things connect to what Black Americans are experiencing, and I guess the fundamental misunderstanding of Black Americans, as DuBois saw it, of what the real problem is. And I'd like to get your reaction after we check this out. Tunde, can we take a listen to this clip of W.E.B. Du Bois?
Because most American Negroes of education and property have long since oversimplified their problem and tried to separate it from all other social problems. They conceive that their fight is simply to have the same rights and privileges as other American citizens. They do not for a moment stop to question how far the organization of work and distribution of wealth in America is perfect, nor do they for a moment conceive that the economic organization of America may have fundamental injustices and shortcomings which seriously affect not only Negroes, but the whole world. Just as Booker Washington, in his day, assumed that American ideals were complete and right, that all we had to do was to fight to imitate and attain them, so today, we Negroes are largely quite swept away by the miracles of American industry, the huge accumulation of wealth, and the conspicuous expenditure which we find about us. Our idea of heaven is to be rich Americans, to make the kind of show in home, dress, and automobiles that is so popular in America, and to suffer in our effort to do these things, that we should be able to do them with no discrimination on account of race or color. This is dangerously short-sighted. We American Negroes are part of the working force of the world. Not only do we represent an important segment of the American working class, but also of the working classes of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and the other Americas.
Charisse, okay, so I'm not going to even hold you. This is where I very much fall down in my analysis, because I very rarely remember to include it through a class lens, but that's for the simple reason that I've always despised the wealthy. I've always despised bougie niggas. So to me, that kind of goes without saying, but I understand now the value in always reinforcing that. And Du Bois hit me right in the heart when, he was talking about how Black Americans just really aspire to have the material trappings of white folks, but without the hassle of being bothered by police and having to face daily racism and discrimination. Talk to me about the point that he just made there.
What's a little bit disingenuous about what Du Bois was saying is that he even have to hearken on Booker T. Washington. He could have referenced himself because there's so much writing early on when Du Bois is using this stupid caste framework where he's basically arguing that, so the way that he argues that even Black folks with education, refinement, culture are subjected to the same types of white barbarism, and that even betrays a class politics, because what it's saying is that the refined, the leaders, the people who have modeled every aspect of civilization should not be subjected to violence. Why not? You still Black, right? And so it's not, and so that's a particular type of caste argument, because what the caste argument does is obfuscate the intraracial class dynamics and the way that number one, that violence and dispossession accrues differentially around differently classed people, but also, and the primary, and the other thing that it does is it props up the quote unquote best and brightest and leaders of the race as those whose dispossession or discrimination matters most. And this is simply not the case, because the majority of us we are a working bunch, right? We are the most, as Hubert Harrison said once, we're the most fully proletarianized people, right? We are a race of workers. And so all of that to say, so I think Du Bois is right in the analysis that he said, but there's this letter between him and this Russian dude. I always forget his name, but Du Bois, and it's from the 1950s. And he says in that letter, it was not until very recently that he even understood himself as part of the working class and understood the sort of revolutionary potential of the working class, because that's not a talented tend to model. So anyway, so to make a short story long, I just feel like Du Bois could have just dragged himself as opposed to trying to displace that, because that was his position. He oscillated between that position for much, for at least the first half of his life. That being said, I think he's absolutely correct that Black people, especially, it's a but-for logic, right? That a lot of US Blacks think that the US is the greatest country and has the most potential but for racism. That if it is that we get rid of racism, then the system will be okay, which is to say that they think oppression is okay. Right? They think that the overwhelming majority of people being exploited and poor and, dispossessed is okay, as long as it's proportional to, let us say, for example, if Black people are 13% of the population, then at least 13% of the sort of upper class should be Black folks, right? But what that's saying is that the capitalist system is okay if you can root out the racism. But this is why we use the term racial capitalism, because there's no way to root out the racism the racial ordering and the racial hierarchy from capitalism. And so I think that, the other thing we need to consider, though, is there is a way that wealth has been able to sort of lengthen the proximity between Black folks and violence. So, for example, Henry Louis Gates gets arrested outside of his house for being Black, sure. But he then gets to call Obama. He lives, he don't get shot down, whereas the litany of Black people who are murdered by the cops are overwhelmingly, if not exclusively, working class and poor. And so I think that there's a way that Black folks ascribe or aspire to particular types of wealth for self-preservation, not understanding that the wealth is not going to save you, or it might make your life better individually, but that as long as the majority of Black people are niggerized, right? As long as the majority of Black people are considered to be worthy of domination, dispossession, incarceration, and everything else, your Black ass is not safe because you're still Black, period. As my dad used to say, dress a nigga as you will, a nigga is a nigga still. And that's just the reality of it. And so I think that Du Bois's analysis is correct in that wealth is not gonna save us. It's us as a majority, unless that wealth is fundamentally redistributed. But as we know, people ain't trying to be billionaires to redistribute nothing. They're trying to be billionaires because they think that that's going to give them a seat at the table. Right? Right. Yeah. So, there's a term, schadenfreude, that is like about reveling in the sort of misfortune of others.
Yes.
Right? Because there's a racial component to that, or there's an interracial component to that, because, it's those Blacks or them over there. It's not me. But it's like, yes, it is, because you're still Black. So
and even if it's not you as an individual, I mean, it's your family member, it's somebody that you grew up with, it's someone that you went to school with. This is the
rub. Black folks are one or two people removed from any. So I have a PhD, right? I'm effectively petty bouge. I have a brother who is in prison for life, right? I have a sister who is incarcerated. She'll be out soon. But nothing about my education, nothing about my ability to accumulate a tiny modicum of money, nothing about my quote unquote cultural capital has saved me from that. And some people flee their proximity to these forms of domination. And then other folks, radicals, I would say, are like, no, I fundamentally understand that, this is my responsibility, not only because it's in my family, but because it affects my entire community. And I am because they are. I am because we are, right? A person is a person because of people. And I think that, Du Bois, I think he always understood that, and he always loved Black people, but his understanding of who was the agent of change, or whose responsibility or whose sort of privilege it was to lead, that is what shifted over time.
I want to bring in our other guest. Tunde, is Afeni's with us? Wonderful. And I'm sorry to keep you waiting, darling. I'd like you guys to give a warm Burn It Down with Kim Brown welcome to Afeni Evans. She is an organizer with Freedom Fighters DC, at Red is Ari on Twitter. This young sister really gives me a lot of inspiration, because I'm like, oh, the kids are all right, wonderful. And I don't mean to call you a kid, Afeni. I say that from an auntie disposition. But thank you so much for making time and joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you and with Dr. CBS. Woo woo! I'm super excited.
So, I mean, Afeni, you out here right now organizing on a variety of different issues, and I wanted to get your take on how you view things. And I know you have you come to this topic with a very interesting and storied background, because I remember doing a prior panel with you, and you shared that your family members are immigrants from Latin America and from the Caribbean. So I imagine if you wanted to leave, you had some place to go, but yet here you are. You stand and fight the amazing fight on behalf of Black liberation. And I'm just curious, what is your reasoning for that and your thoughts about Pan-African organizing and the need for it?
Well, I just want to be very clear. Like, I'm second gen. So for me, like, America is the only home that I have really understood and like grown up in. And you know, how do I say this? I mean, I'm also a lesbian, so I couldn't go back to Jamaica if I wanted to be honest, because unfortunately, like homophobia very much violently exists there. But so, I mean, those are probably the main reasons why I don't go back to my homes, because Cologne, Panama is also the same way. But as far as like, lickety splitting up out of here, I mean, I think about it daily. I'm not gonna lie. um, I don't know, like I feel like as organizers, as Black women, especially, like just being a Black woman in general, like seeing the news, seeing where this country is going, seeing, little Black children being brutalized by the police on your TL, seeing, an administration that's basically put the middle finger up to every demographic group that actually got him elected. Like, it's a scary time. And it's already been scary to be here, but it continuously feels like we're going back to the 1950s. If Black women like Lauren Smith Fields and Ashley McDonald can just disappear and no one look for them, no one really care, like the media doesn't make a big stir, like I understand why people are like, we should go. But on the other hand, we built all this shit for free. America would not have an economy. America would not have culture. America would not have certain foods or anything without Black people. Whether or not, like, we wanted to be here, that's another conversation. But our contributions to this culture, to this economy, are immeasurable. And because of that, I want my cut. You feel me? Like y'all owe me something. So I'm not about to sit up here and just leave y'all with all of this, not all of the shit that I built, that my ancestors built. No. Like you have to come up off of some of the piece, some of the pie. Absolutely not. So I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna fight. Even when I get really stressed out, even when I cry at night, I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna fight, because we have to win not only for ourselves, but for every single, African-American descendant of slave or slave in the diaspora widely that spilled their blood, all of the enslaved African people whose remains are floating in the bottom of the ocean, never to be found, never to be named. We gotta get all of our coins back, not only from America, but also from all those colonial powers as well. That's how I feel about also the Pan-African organizing situation. Like, yeah, that's like the least to start.
I mean, ladies, y'all are making me feel like a whiny little bitch for just sitting here. Like, get me the fuck up out of here yesterday. Like, I'm reconsidering how I'm feeling about all of this, because I feel as though, I mean, you guys know, I have to tell y'all, I mean, America, being Black woman in America, Afeni being a gay Black woman in America, it is a soul crushing experience on a daily basis. And I appreciate you, Afeni, for putting some context to, the type of fatal oppression that even beyond just being Black and a woman, that gay people will face in other places. So yeah, that is something definitely of note. But Charisse, looking at this through the long lens of history, I mean, understanding that this particular moment in time is that just but a moment, but at the same time, it is part of a broader context of a movement. And for DuBois, someone who lived to be over the age of 90, I mean, I would imagine he thought things progressed relatively far during the course of his lifetime, or perhaps he didn't feel that way. So how should we feel now in 2022, understanding that we are up against a whole lot of systems of oppression, but perhaps we are not feeling them as harshly as our ancestors did? Like, how do we not despair despite all the circumstances and situations that we see happening around us and specifically happening to Black people here in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, it depends on who you ask when you talk about how acutely this moment is felt, right? I'm doing okay. But the overwhelming majority are not. And like with with the advent of social media and the harnessing of technology to our demise and to our like increased oppression, like mental health is terrible. Physical health is terrible, and so I think I wouldn't compare obviously this moment to enslavement, but I think that number one, we shouldn't understand time as a linear progress narrative, that as we move on, things get better, but nor should we compare the types of domination that we're experiencing now to the past and mark it as better or worse. I think the question we need to ask is like, what are the correlation of forces and what are the struggles that we need to be engaging in now? Like what are we trying to do and what do we need to fight to do that, right? And so and I think that for DuBois, there were things that he saw to be getting better, but there are things that he saw to be getting worse. He grew increasingly disillusioned with electoral politics, for example. Like he has this piece from the 1940s that talks about why he wasn't voting for the first time in his life. He was not going to vote because he's like, it was the idea where we are now, where it's sort of one party, two factions, the duopoly. And so, but at the same time, I think he did realize the erosion of particular types of brute, direct, overt domination, right? So lynching did abate over time, right? There were particular gains to be made, but we can't understand time in a linear fashion or in a progressive fashion. It just is what it is. And the other thing we have to understand about the United States is that the periods of progress are the aberration. The quote unquote rising fascism is not the aberration. This is a settler colony. This is a right-wing settler colonial racist capitalist society. So it is the moments of reprieve that are actually they're reversible, they're temporary, and those are the aberrations. And once we have that clarity, I think we can understand the necessity and the nature of the struggle.
I think I might cry based off of what you just said. Afeni, I mean, seriously, because Charisse, like, I mean, that when you just said that just rang so true. Like, no, the majority of this country's history has been marked by violence and oppression, and when so-called civil rights gains have been made, that is the aberration. Like that is the exception. Oh my God.
And they're wholly reversible. That is what is so important. Because they're happening through the legal juridical state, they are wholly reversible and they're temporary. Listen, we got the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in 1860, 1865, 1866, 1867. Why did we need a Voting Rights Act and a Civil Rights Act 100 years later if these things are already codified in the Constitution? It is because they're wholly reversible, period. So I just try to keep that in mind when I think about the nature of the struggle.
Afeni, I'm certain that in your time of being conscious and of course doing your organizing work, you have seen a lot of this actually play out in real time, where erosions of so-called rights or rights that people thought that they had, particularly Black people thought that they had, not so much.
Absolutely. I think it's very important to notate the fact that, civil rights did not get to the root of the issue in this country. The root of the issue is that the financial wealth and the war power is on the side that is white supremacist, that is racist, and that is violent, and that is oppressing the rest of us. So as long as we have no access or no true equity in any of those arenas, or we just don't abolish the war powers altogether as a country, then we will continuously be stuck in this loop of these legislators that are conservative, that are racist, that are white supremacists, because this is a white supremacist country, that do not want Black people to be whole people. And they will continue to legislate that way because they do not see our humanity. They never have. It was never the whole point of us being here was never to be human in the first place. This was not what they cooked up. So whenever I hear like constitutional, like fundamentalists, like, and those like conservatives that say things like that, like I automatically hear these people that just, they want so badly to be able to be their racist selves, their ancestral like calling is to be racist and be colonizing. And so because of that, it is incumbent upon organizers like myself to not only fight for like the cultural wins, but say like, okay, yeah, like we want voting rights, but we want ranked choice voting, and also give us our reparations and some land too. Like that's what we're organizing for. Like I'm very much tired of Black people, black organizers from establishment, and like a more like democratic leaning organizations dominating the narrative and not talking about the very important fact that until we get to the nucleus of the power of this country, which means getting access to actual financial freedom, then we have no other conversation to have. If it is not about reparations and land and about true atonement for every single irreparable harm from slavery on, then we need to stop compromising. White people don't compromise. They don't compromise shit. You think they've been compromising. But while they said, okay, fine, we'll do the Fair Housing Act. Guess what they also did? We're also going to incarcerate a bunch of y'all. We're also going to make sure that the housing that you have access to, we're still going to find a way, the racist credit system, to make sure you don't have access to that. No matter what happens, the white people ain't compromising a damn thing. So even these little cultural things, like, what does that really do for me? Yay, we have MLK Day. That's cool, but you're not even really talking about who Martin Luther King Jr. was. So what are we doing here? What are we doing? We don't have a Malcolm X Day. We don't have a Marcus Garvey Day. Let's have a George Jackson Day. Let's talk about that. Y'all not having none of those days. So if you're not honoring the people that actually wanted to get me free as well, and the people that did want to get me free, if you're not truly giving the message, then what the hell are we even having these conversations for? I just want all Black people and all Black organizers to get very much past the symbolism. Like none of this symbol shit does not matter. If a Black woman becomes the next Supreme Court justice, which I mean, it will be cool, I guess. If she's still a corporatist, if she's still an imperialist, if she still believes in the racial oppression of her own folks, then what is the win? Because we have Kamala, we had Barack, and we still don't have shit. So what now?
Charisse, I'm gonna ask you this question and I'm gonna get you out of here, guys, because the premiere of tonight's episode of The Last Dope Intellectual starts at 6:00, so set your reminders for that. But Charisse, Du Bois didn't shy away from multiracial coalitions among working class people, and I think that is where America always seems to falter, because it's very hard to get a majority of white working class folks to understand, number one, how their struggles do align with those of non-white folks, and especially Black folks, when it comes to class and wealth inequality. And I mean, what lessons can we take away from the coalitions with non-Black folks that that Du Bois himself was able to facilitate?
Well, so on this thing about coalition, right? I think part of what like we need to emphasize is like the land here is not ours. The land is not the U.S. government's to give to Black folks. What it is, but that is a conversation between Black people and Indigenous folks. The white folks ain't got nothing to do with that. But I think that we need to be careful, especially somebody like me who believes in the Black Belt Nation thesis, who believes in the Republic of New Africa, to be mindful that it's not our land to take. It is not anybody's land to give us. And so that's something that we'll have to struggle around with Indigenous folks. The first order of operations is to challenge fundamentally challenge, not dismantle. I don't know how we went from overthrow to dismantle, but whatever, to dismantle the system as it is. And so I think we do need coalitions. I don't know about the white folks. I think we need coalition with racialized people globally. In the US, we are a minority. Globally, we're a majority. I don't know, especially these US white folks, I don't know. I'm in an all Black organization. I only have Black people on my show. We have one white person, George Chikarilla Lamar. But like, I don't know, right? But in terms of racialized folks, colonized, dispossessed folks, that is what we have to struggle around. And I think that there is some type of strategic coalitions we have to make with white folks in this country because of their numerical majority. But spending time convincing them that racism is a thing and that it's not the niggas and the immigrants that are taking your jobs, that it's the ruling class, it's yo people. That's not my ministry. And when, you know, these white folks ask about how to be allies, that's their work. They need to go organize their communities and get their folks together, right? But in terms of, I do think coalitions are important. And this is where the anti-Blackness language is so pernicious, because if you argue, I think anti-Black racism is real. But when you talk about Blackness as a sort of, if that means that there's no possibility of coalition, that there's no possibility of working together toward a common end, then what the fuck do you have? You just non-human? Then what? Because that's not that, you know what I mean? And so I think that when we talk about anti-Blackness, we can't have a sort of abstract ontological argument about it. We have to understand how the material processes that cause violence and dispossession to accrue in very unique ways around bodies racialized as Black. But that doesn't mean that, and even if other groups are anti-Black, right? That doesn't mean that coalitions and associations are not possible. There are no pure revolutionaries. There are no perfect people who struggle, right? And so I think coalitions are absolutely important. What I will say, I do think we have to come from a position of strength. And so at this stage of struggle, we have to get our people together. Keeping in mind that there are broader coalitional struggles to be had, but right now we have to struggle. We have to come into coalitions from a position of strength. So, you know, call me a nationalist, call me whatever. And so in terms of DuBois, he went back and forth in the 1930s. He was like on his Black nationalist shit because he realized the racism of the labor movement. He realized the ways that the Great Depression had brought about a virulent racism. And so he was advocating for a separate Black cooperative economy. And this is part of why he got ousted from the NAACP the first time. And so I think Du Bois fundamentally understood correlation of forces. And so, you know, once the labor movement became, you know, more Black people began to be included in like the CIO, for example, he sort of moved away from that separate Black economy, but he was never objectively like, Black and white, unite and fight. When white folks showed their ass, I think that he was like, we have to think of something else to do. And I think that we constantly need to keep that in mind as we're struggling as well. And stop trying to palliate white folks. What did Gerald Horne say? Quit making excuses for these backward Euro-Americans. Like, that's not our main struggle at this point, in my perspective. So.
Charisse, I wish I could hold you, but I know you got to be out to handle the premiere of tonight's Last Dope Intellectual. You guys, please go check that out. Thank you so much to Charisse Burden-Stelly for joining us today. Charisse, I know you have the book coming up, so I hope that you are able to come back and join us because the title of the book is called Organize, Fight, Win: 3 Decades of Black Communist Women's Political Writings. And I'm looking forward to that. When does that book come out, Charisse, this spring?
October 4th. 2022.
Oh, that's so exciting. And I'm so glad that you were able to make time to be on with us today, guys. Thank you, Dr. CBS, LDI. Go subscribe, go check it out with Dr. Layla Brown, and of course, 2 Black, the trio there holding things down for the Last Dope Intellectual. Dr. CBS, thank you so much for coming on and bringing it down with Kim.
Thank you for having me, Kim, and great to meet you, Afeni. You're amazing. Keep going. Thank you for struggling for us and loving us. So thank you both.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Right.
Afeni, you can't go yet. You gotta stay just a few more minutes, babe, because I want to kick the same question to you. Obviously, we had to let CBS go because her show's about to premiere. So, she has other business to handle. But Afeni, before I let you go, I want you to, just chop it up for a couple more minutes with Auntie, if you don't mind, because I mean, you organize right now, right? You are here in DC with Freedom Fighters DC. I mean, you guys are doing a lot of mutual aid work in the community, but there has been a lot of, or I won't say a lot, but enough instances here in the district where you as organizers were confronted prior to January 6th by white supremacists dealing with a very hostile Metropolitan Police Department. And the call that I saw coming from Black organizers and some white comrades like Chuck Modiano was like, excuse me, where were the white folks of June of 2020? Where did y'all go? Where did y'all go? Talk to me about your thoughts and your experiences about organizing across multiracial lines and how successful that is, how practical that is, or is it even something that Black organizers should even be bothering to do?
So I wouldn't say it's something that we shouldn't bother to do because, like Dr. CBS said, like we are in a majority white country. So there's a certain and
Sorry. Afeni, did we lose her? Oh,
critical mass
no.
of white people.
Wait, hold on, Sistren. Hold on, Sistren. Wait, hold fast because your connection dropped out a little bit. I'm sorry. No. I'm gonna need you to start that whole thing over. I'm so sorry because it got a little
Can you
choppy.
hear me?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The feds are sitting outside your house trying to disrupt your signal. So it came in extremely choppy. Would you mind starting from the beginning with what you were saying?
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, we got you.
Okay.
We got you good now. We got you good now.
So basically, what was I saying?
You said
That's
you
the
did not think
question.
that organizing with white people or trying to build coalitions is a waste of time. It's not a waste of time.
Oh, it's not necessarily. Waste of time,
Oh,
but like Dr. CBS said, like we do need like a certain critical.
D Rocky, I just saw your super chat. Thank you. If you guys were running us super chats, I have to confess I was not paying close attention because I was so enthralled by Dr. CBS and Afeni. Okay. Tunde's going to talk to Afeni because we're having some trouble with her connection. But just really quick, Samaya, thank you so much for your super chat. Samaya says, in honor of DuBois, Garvey, George Jackson, and Marsha P. Johnson, thank you so much. Yes, our freedom fighters, as we remember them always, not just on Black History Month. Thank you, D. Rocky, for that super chat for an amazing show. Guys, I appreciate you all believing that the show was amazing. And if you are watching and you are not a subscriber, Burn It Out with Kim Brown, I implore you to please smash that subscribe button and hit like. We would certainly appreciate it. Guys, I'm just here to facilitate the conversation. You know that CBS is a genius. You know Afeni is a real a real chick out here in these streets. Like, I am the conduit. I'm asking the question on behalf of us who are not as exceptional as these ladies, right? Like, how can I get on your level? Charisse, how can I get on your level? Afeni, let me ask the questions and sit at y'all's feet and you all bestow the wisdom upon us, but through the context and understanding of not only your study, but your life experience and your understanding as well. Is Afeni back with us? Sistren, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I don't hear her very well, Tunde. She sounds really, I don't even think I can really hear her at all. Okay. Afeni,
Can you hear me?
are you still with us? There we go. Yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay, but no.
The floor is yours, my darling. Just talk. say whatever
I'm
thoughts
sorry.
you was going. No, you're fine. You're fine. I know what it is. The girl, the feds is all around here fucking people's signals up. That's my personal belief because I experience signal problems quite regularly, and it makes no sense except for them people. But anywho, please continue with your thought.
Oh no, I was just saying, like Dr. CBS said, like we do need a critical mass of white people in a majority white country to ally with and support our ideals. We do need to also build coalitions with, other, groups of color that could possibly have, a more comparable experience to us as far as like all of that is concerned. But I've ran into some really good white people in DC that whose allyship is true, it's genuine, and they can truly do the work of deconstructing their white ego. I grew up around a lot of white people, so I've gotten to know them pretty well in my 25 years. And one thing I have realized is like their entitlement is so deeply ingrained because just as, there might be some insecurity amongst the Black community, the just pedestal that white people put themselves on is just, honestly, it's something to marvel at, to see like how they think their mediocrity can just be so fantastic. Like they really think that they just don't have to do much, and that's just what it is. That's the standard. And so for there to be white people in this space that can deconstruct their white ego, actively dismantle white supremacy, and not, kind of lose their sense of self at the same time and understand that they are more than their whiteness, it's very, very, very rare that I see white people that can get down to that level of, humanity and understanding their intrinsic role because of their ancestry in white supremacy, and that because of their intrinsic role, it is up to them and only them to dismantle a system that their ancestors built. I think that, oh, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, to your point about entitlement, I mean, we're kind of seeing, well, anyway, there's not a day that goes by in the United States that we don't see an example of that or that playing out in some way. But most recently in the news, especially here in the DC area, regarding the indoor masking mandates for public schools in Northern Virginia. And I was just marveling at the way that the media managed to go out of its way to center the stories of literally a handful of white children whose white parents did not want them to wear masks. And this just became a regional issue, all because a handful of white people were uncomfortable. and now policies have been changed. School board members have been recalled. Why? Because some white folks were not 100% comfortable, Afeni, 100% of the time. And I agree with you. I think it's so imperative for our comrades or our allies. Like they have to do the work to work on other white folks. It's quite a feat for them to do the work upon themselves. But once that work has been done, I have no idea how our white comrades go and tell the others and free some more minds. Because as you said, that whiteness and that entitlement is ingrained. It is entrenched, and it is something that it does not appear to be easy to rid yourself of, either voluntarily or even involuntarily, for white folks.
I mean, yeah, because, we think about our ancestral connection. Like, I truly believe that I am born with the trauma and the pain of the people that came before me. I'm born with, if you meet a majority of my family, like, none of them act like the way that I do. Like, none of them are out here rebelling against the government, and doing things like that. None of them are out here putting themselves in the line, because that's not what they feel called to do. This is something that I really feel like, was this was passed down to me, not from the people that are immediately around me, but from the people that came, before us and fought before us. So if I can feel that ancestral connection, if I can feel that, and so many other Black people can feel that ancestral connection, then what makes you think that the white folks can't either? They feel that. They feel it. That's what a majority of white people in this country are operating from. They're operating from their carnal desire Their
Carnal.
carnal desire to stay superior to everybody else that is here because they are scared. Period. So, I mean,
Listen,
do
the
I
whole
think that it's effective to organize with white people? I think that if you can find the white people that are truly in community with you, that are truly doing the work of completely overthrowing and destroying white supremacy, if they're trying to do that work and you can actively see them doing that work, then sure. But I mean, me personally, I feel like we have so much work to do within the Black community. We have so much decolonizing to do within our minds, like as far as like Black capitalism concerned, as far as like, the chasing of consumerism, like the thinking that for some strange reason, a country that has never loved us will find some love for you. No, we have to let all of that go. And find value within ourselves to fight back for our own survival. So me personally, I mean, white people, they talk to me. I'm in community with a lot of white people. I'm saying I don't hate them, but it's not my job to organize them. That's not what I'm here for. Period.
I appreciate that, and I respect that, and I 100% agree with that. And Afeni, I'm going to let you go because I know we have a lot of our viewers here that watch The Last Dope Intellectual, and I'm not trying to make y'all choose. I'm not trying to make y'all choose between Dr. CBS and Layla Brown and Two Black in Town with Kim Brown. So Afeni, I'm going to conclude our conversation, but I am inviting you right now to please, 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 please come back to me. Please come back to me and come talk to us about the work of Freedom Fighters DC, also about the news. And again, I'm always skeptical of shit. If I see it on the regular news, I'm like, that's probably some foolery, but maybe it ain't some foolery. Allegedly, the trucker convoy that occupied the streets of Ottawa, Canada, are supposedly coming here to the DC area around the time of Joe Biden's State of the Union speech. And again, I know you met the white supremacists head on in advance of January 6th. So you have a very unique perspective upon this particular group coming to town, and then the way that Metropolitan Police, DC Police deal with them, but also, Afeni, all of the shit going on with Metropolitan Police. And if you watch the local news, it's like, oh, it was another day at the office for Chief Robert Conte. They don't present it as a police department in very obvious disarray. And there's a lot that I want to ask you about MPD that we're going to have to save for another show. But I'd love to have you back on. And I'm so grateful that you were able to make some time to come on with me today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to come back. So we'll definitely talk about all of that. I have so much to say about DC.
I know you do. I know you do. Yes, and I cannot wait to hear it. So guys, BID, WKB fan, Fire fan, join me in thanking Afeni Evans, organizer from Freedom Fighters DC. Please follow her on Twitter at RedIsAri, REDDISARI. And she's amazing. And by the way, if you go to Chuck Modiano's Twitter page, he has some outstanding soliloquies from Afeni, especially again the when the white supremacists came to DC and tore shit up before January 6th, and people don't around the country, I don't think really have a good grasp of that. But Afeni has some amazing amazing speeches. I don't know what else to call them, that she said that she is able to articulate so much of the systemic oppression and all the shit. So please check all that out. And thank you again to Afeni Evans for joining us. And thank you again to Dr. CBS. You guys, Dr. CBS came on the show. Do you understand how excited I am about that? Thank you so much to Anna Hart. Anna Hart ran us some bucks. Anna says, this is why you're my fave interviewer. Thank you so much, Anna. That is so kind. And gang, I'm so enthralled. I cannot wait to go back and reread the chat. I see all my good sisters is in here. Rain DeSud is in here. Courtney the SLP. What's that? Oh, thank you, Courtney. Is that happening tonight, 8 p.m., the Africana Versus? Is that the Africana Versus? It's happening at 8 o'clock. I'm telling y'all, listen, Listen, oh, y'all thought it was 3-6 and Bone Thugs? Oh, y'all thought it was Mary J? Not Mary J. You thought it was Jill Scott versus Erykah Badu? The best verses is going down tonight. Oh, you thought it was Brandy and Monica? No, the best verses is going down tonight. It is going down. Dr. Jared Ball versus Dr. Greg Carr. Africana versus Africana. Morgan State versus HU. Baltimore versus DC. It's going down. On Black Power Media, please go over and subscribe to BPM. I need to set my reminder because I'm going to watch that on the TV. I'm going to watch that on the television. I can't watch that on my phone. That's going to be the best. That's going to be the best. And y'all know I'm just saying all this in good-natured fun. It ain't verses, but it might be verses. It might be citation versus citation. These guys could go back. It could be bars versus bars. It could be all kinds of things. But I know it is all love between Greg Carr and Jared Ball. So this should be a good thing to check out over there on Black Power Media. Also, Look My Nation is tonight. But I'm gonna turn y'all loose so y'all can go on over there and watch tonight's episode of Last Dope Intellectual. Shout out to CBS again. Shout out to Layla Brown and 2 Black for holding it down over there. Gang, thank you all so much. Let me send love going out to Molly. She was a little under the weather tonight. So Molly, we hope you are feeling better. And gang, our merch is still available. Places, you can find it. Places. It's around. It is around places. You should look for it. Thank you to Black Magic for sharing the picture of her mug. Thank you to Patrick S. And thank you again to Black Magic for y'all's wonderful ties and support. We certainly appreciate all of that. So guys, wait, what am I missing here? What am I missing? David Silberg, thank you. Thank you so much. Vesper X coming through. We love y'all. Lateef. Come on, Rose. Rose, I saw you ordered your merch. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Rose, so much for that. Lateef, send me the picture when LJ gets his t-shirt, his BIDWKB t-shirt. I can't wait for that. But anyway, guys, please be safe out here. COVID, still out here jumping on people. It's probably about to jump on way more people since they lifted the indoor masking mandates. So BIDWKB fam, 5 fam, I need y'all to be smart out here, please, because these people are obviously trying to kill us. Keep your masks on. Shit is not all good out here. The pandemic is still very much pandemic, and be safe. I don't want COVID to get you. On behalf of me, Tunde, and Molly, we love you guys so much. See y'all back here Tuesday. See y'all later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.